Morning, welcome to the Cambridge Power Platform User Group Spring Sessions. It's 40 degrees outside, but this is our spring session. It's not our fault the weather moved. So welcome. We have some fantastic people to speak with you today, but just wanted to say thank you so much to our sponsors, Casper 365 and Zen Zero, who are helping to fund the time that it takes and the people in the background that make these events happen. So very, very welcome. We're going to have a really lively discussion today. We have a whole week of events planned. So let's just have a quick look at what we've got on this week. A bit about me, in case you don't know me. Welcome, and it's lovely to meet you. I'm on LinkedIn more than Twitter, but do feel free to connect. I'm always willing to have a chat about anything, and if there's coffee involved, then all there. So yeah, do always catch up with me on the socials. And these are the people that are in the background. So behind the scenes, we have, I don't think we've got Sancho on today, but we have got Luke and Amber. Amber has organised the event for us, courtesy of Zen Zero. And Luke is there doing the moderating for us in the chat for all the very active comments that I'm sure are going to come the moment we start talking. Just some nice to haves. Please always be nice to each other. If you come off mute to ask a question, or if you're putting things in the chat, please just always be nice. That's all we ask. This is our code of conduct. Okay, so this is what we've got on this week. We have an event every day of the week, Monday through Friday, and we're going to spend an hour and a half with you talking about Power Platform, AI, and everything in the middle. So today, AI in action, we've got a variety of people here to chat, and I'll go through everybody that we've got in just a moment. Tuesday, we're having a presentation by Clarissa talking about user-defined functions, so we're getting into a little bit deeper on the tech in Power Apps, what's going on in there at the moment that's fun and challenging. So Clarissa will guide you through all of that. We've then got the 5 steps to successful Copilot adoption with Leslie, the lovely Leslie, who couldn't be here with us today, but will be here on Wednesday. We've then got your AI pair consultant, I think that's such a good title, from Douglas, who is also on the panel with us today. Again, Claude in the Power Platform, getting interesting. So getting into the weeds on some of the topics that we're probably going to touch on lightly today. And then we're going to close the week out with a Women in Tech, subject that's close to certainly my heart and very much Zoe's, of how we encourage more women to be involved in the technical side, and how we can go on encouraging that even through, the AI revolution, and onwards with Power Platform and how that's developing, but in wider techs as well. So where are we at with the Women in Tech story? So coming back today then, AI in action. So we have with us today, Luke, if you want to just move on to the next slide. There we go. This is a little bit about me. That's boring. We know about me. Move on. Okay, the lovely Zoe. So Zoe, you'll have seen on podcasts like Copilot Connection, if it's still called that, so, and many episodes in. My favourite was the one with Jeff Teeper at MVP Summit, Fireside Chat, fantastic. Lots and lots of episodes. And Zoe came through several organisations, currently at Kyndryl. So I'm sure we'll hear a little bit about that and what's going on at Kyndryl as we get to talk to Zoe today. Next up, Sean. Sean's a new attendee, not had you in an event before, so nice to have you here, Sean. Sean is here courtesy of Zen Zero as the head of AI and cloud solutions. So Sean knows all about AI in practice, what organisations are asking for, and what's being actually delivered. And that's really why we wanted Sean here today, to talk about what those asks are that are really coming through from the enterprise. And last but not least, the lovely Douglas, who is here to give, again, another balanced opinion on the business application side of things. So more focused around business applications and AI and how they come together. And that should give us a little bit more drawback to the Power Platform side of the conversation, we hope. Lovely to have you all here. Welcome. Would you like to say hello? You can all come off mute.
Oh, cool. Hey, everyone, really good to be here and excited for the conversation to see what everyone wants to chat about and explore what's out there.
Likewise, Sharon, delighted to be here again.
Yeah, thank you for having us. I think it's going to be nice.
Okay, so afterwards the recording will go up on YouTube. So we have our own channel. I think it's actually just through, if you just search for my name, you'll find it, or SharePoint Sharon, as I'm affectionately known. And we'll have all of the content and the discussion up there within a week or so of all of the events taking place this week. So without further ado, let's get straight into some conversation. So, guys, who wants to go first? Let's start with agents. Are we seeing agents being requested by organizations? What's your experience of what's out there currently? I'm going to pick on somebody. So what are you seeing?
So, yes, I mean, it's the buzzword of the moment, isn't it? We've kind of moved on from Copilot being everywhere to agents. One of the things that I see, though, is that people are very confused about what agents actually are. And I also think that the technical people who are working to help them don't necessarily help them, because agents show up in so many different ways across so many different parts of the tech stack, whether it's autonomous agents that we're using to transform backend processes, or user-focused agents, or agents that are embedded inside Dynamics or something like that. Yeah. So it's one of those words that I think has a lot of different meanings. And this confusion is definitely something that organizations are trying to navigate their way through at the moment.
Yeah, I do agree. I mean, I think from Microsoft's point of view, we really started out with agent being just a flavor of a chatbot, didn't we, really? Sean, how have you seen that change in organizations as the asks come through?
I think, as I mentioned, I see a lot of confusion around what an agent actually is, and it definitely started with something that was within Copilot, just sitting there on the side, to people thinking about automation and running entire processes. So such a widespread, which becomes hard to manage, especially when not always sure what everyone's after, but definitely a growth in that space, and a lot around knowledge agents we found. So people wanting something that's just a little bit more specific to their task, their role, even if it's not an automation, just helping them answer more specific questions. And that's growing a lot, and we're seeing more and more of that. Obviously a growth in automation, but I think the knowledge agents are quicker to get to and still add value much faster.
Yeah, I mean, we've got the knowledge agents across several of the key M365 platform, and certainly within the Power Platform side of things. Douglas, are you developing anything exciting on the Power Agents side of things?
Yeah, I mean, there's a pressure right now to deliver anything, not just exciting stuff, but I think everyone is pressured to do stuff. And I think the most important part that at least I'm trying to do with my team and the company that I've been working on is to ensure that we have the proper data and the proper processes planned. So then we can use AI, because I think with all this pressure of putting agents everywhere and copilots everywhere, as we saw at least in the last 12 months, let's say, a lot of companies are not thinking that actually what we are doing is just automating something. It's just a layer on top of what we already have. And then I think there's a lot of confusion, as we discussed it, and a lot of misconceptions when we are putting agents together. And then I think that's the challenge now that we are facing. And then doing exciting stuff. I mean, we always been doing exciting stuff on the automations part, on the applications part of the business applications. And now it's just a different way of doing, maybe faster, maybe with more resources and these kind of things. But I think the foundation is still very, very important.
It's an interesting point, and it makes me smile, because I think there's this conception that everybody's losing their job to AI, and actually the implementation that we currently have of the AI tools, certainly in the Power Platform, you need to understand the Power Platform to be able to use the tooling, right? And it's there to help, I guess, builders, configuration, etc. It certainly doesn't replace yet what we've done in the low code, no code kind of space. What's your thoughts on that, Douglas?
Yeah, I think one of the discussions that I have with, because I work in a company where we have a lot of business consultants, they were used to do Power Automate and these kind of things. And then they said, yeah, then with all these agents, how much of forms should we keep doing? How much of apps or Canvas apps or kind of these user interface stuff should we keep doing? And I mean, we could keep doing chatbots because that's mostly what an agent looks like most of the time. But I think the idea of developing an application, it still remains the same. It's just maybe the different ways that we will build stuff, and maybe we'll focus way more on the business processes other than how they will be consumed. So the way that they will consume could be an agent, that it's an automated agent, an autonomous agent, and sometimes will be a form, or sometimes will be just like just different things that we can interact with the data. But the most important part is still for me the foundation of creating the data model, creating the business process behind the scenes. And so all these things for the local guys, or for people who are not really developers or something like that, I think it's still there, and probably way more important than before, because now this foundation is very important for whatever layer else we put on top. So if we don't put a good foundation on behind the scenes, then everything falls apart, let's say. So I think for the low code, building a data model, building automations behind the scenes that connect data, all these things are even more important, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. It's foundational. In the same way that SharePoint, having your data straight in SharePoint or your data platform is foundational to AI's working well, right? I think a couple of things resonate there. So thinking about the consultants that I've worked with in the past, and even end users right at the organization level, get very excited about the fact that we can do a plain English description of the app that we want to develop, and it goes away and starts developing that app. But in practice, how many of those end up in production? I mean, really. It's a way of helping you get started. It's a way of helping you understand. But then do we end up supporting those and fixing those and actually making those work in the back end? I think we do. Zoe, are you seeing that?
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, I think the barrier to entry for building apps, for building workflows has become much lower. But that only puts more importance on all of the other things that sit around it in terms of lifecycle management and governance and protecting data sources and things like that. So yes, it's easy for people to get started, and maybe you could have like a non-technical end user who can build an MVP to say, this is kind of what I'm thinking about that's going to solve my problem. But that's still a lot of work that the technical people need to do to actually get that into production and into a safe and supported state.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, Sean, I know we get a fair bit through Zen Zero. They're just like, kids can only charge me a couple of days, and I want the world on a stick in AI because it's easy, right?
Yeah, just a quick agents on the side. No, more and more of that. And I think, as I mentioned, the barrier to entry is so low now that everyone can start to build these. So it's getting really easy to get something going, but it's hard to do something well. So a lot of sprawling agents that are half built, not really providing value. And I think one of the big issues now is with no visibility over them. So if I had the right access or was able to get to the right platforms, whether that's Copilot Studio, even a basic agent within Copilot, there's no visibility over that. And no one's managing the life cycle of those agents. And then probably jumping the gun a bit, but also the cost of them. Nothing is free. And we do know like the costs, the licensing model is changing all the time, and staying on top of that is a challenge. So having the sprawling agents estates is going to become harder to manage and more important to manage as well.
Surely not a complicated licensing model. This is Microsoft.
Never.
I feel like that historical messy Power Platform licensing is now starting to sprawl across the rest of the ecosystem.
I agree. I agree. And again, Copilot Studio, Copilot,
Yeah.
we're overusing terminology, aren't we? It's like a Teams team all over again. But I agree with that sprawl, and we get that with everything when we start to be able to enable things to be more available in an organization. We then get this really fast development of stuff. And then somebody has to kind of like you were saying, so come back and clean up, with the governance. What are we actually using? Who's actually using what ended up being of value, and how the heck did you get to that data source? Those things we then have to tidy up later. So I think it's one of those myths that we don't need people anymore, certainly. And I think we've got a little bit more attention these days on how the Power Platform can work with AI, but certainly a lot of the general kind of discussion and noise has been around pro code development with AI, right? That's gone really hard and really fast into really competent code delivery. It's not the same with the Power Platform because we are this delicate balance of configuration, application design, as well as data design. And we've kind of always had to balance those three. And it doesn't matter how low code the solution is. And it's not low design, is it? It can't be. Douglas, you must be seeing this where people think that got simpler. And it just hasn't, has it?
Yeah, definitely. And one thing that I can share with you, I don't know how many of you know, but I'm from Brazil. I work for an European company and I lived in Denmark for a couple of, for a year or something. But I live in Brazil and I was working for a Brazilian company in the past year. And then one thing that we see, at least here in Brazil, a lot right now is that companies are, or at least some companies, they are looking to these local solutions and they are saying, why should we use that instead of just building something from scratch using Lovable or Cloud or whatever, these technologies? Not only the local solutions, any kind of applications in here. And I see that this could be kind of a bad way of looking at things. Maybe in Europe it's not, people are not facing it, but a lot of the discussions right now, I think it's related to, hey, how much should we invest on configuring things versus building something from scratch? So even in the Power Platform, let's say that beforehand a consultant wouldn't try to create a web resource like completely with JavaScript, connecting to the Dataverse tables and putting into place a beautiful page, because they wouldn't know how to do it. But now with Claude or any of those solutions, they might do it. I was even talking yesterday with during the weekend with one colleague. He's a business consultant. He's very good on the configuration part, on the business part of things, and he managed to create a page there was exactly kind of the same features as a custom page that the team has built, and the custom page was having a lot of performance issues, but he managed to do everything with JavaScript, just using Claude connected to Dataverse tables and everything. It has exactly the same features, way faster, way better than the custom page. And I think that's kind of the thing that we will try to face now. And I think more and more. The ability of doing things faster and better, but still the configuration is still there. I think probably we'll need to kind of balance, as you mentioned, Sharon, that we'll need to balance even more now because people can do more than before. And I think that's at least what I'm facing with the team right now. These kind of they are a little bit more powered, let's say, on doing stuff that they wouldn't try to touch before because they have no idea on how to develop stuff.
Surely that's a risk, though. I see this
Definitely.
with I see this with a lot of organizations where I think we'll start to see that build versus buy discussion becoming much more important, because you've got like developers who are given a use case or a problem that a customer has, and they just immediately default to, how do I build something that's going to solve this problem, instead of dropping down the stack and looking at the other tools that the organization is already paying for and what they've got within their license, and where you leverage that embedded AI, where you extend, where you integrate. And there's a couple of risks for me. One is creating a significant amount of technical debt that then needs to be maintained, particularly when we look at things like model changes and the need to continuously reevaluate the solution that you're building and make sure that you don't have drift and that it's still giving the best outcomes. But also just from a cost perspective as well, helping CIOs understand how to leverage the things that they're already paying for. And this becomes even more important when we look at this move that we see in the industry now towards more of a consumption or usage-based pricing. Because when you look at an organization who might be paying for Copilot Premium and then suddenly they're having to pay for CoWork and WorkIQ API and GitHub Copilot and all of these other things, like how do they actually manage the cost of that and how do they prove that they're getting the value?
Yeah, I mean, that's a constant conversation, isn't it? The value versus the cost. Because if the value isn't there, then why did we even start out on this route? What are we even trying to do for the organization? Sean, are you seeing any of that?
Yeah, massively. And I think it's so much harder to kind of get metrics around ROI currently. I mean, with automations and agents that are running flows in the background, you can start to measure that. It took me X time before, it takes me now, this long now. But if I'm using it to manage my week, if I'm using it to draft emails, those kind of day-to-day tasks, no one knows how long those really took before, or no one measured them. So how do I now say I'm saving this much time a week if I'm not sure how long it took previously? And that's becoming much harder to justify, especially with the consumption-based models, as well as with something we struggle with lots is how much will this actually cost? And because it's a consumption-based, it's very hard to give people estimates and numbers without spending some time in the business or letting them use these tools. So hard to give that upfront cost in the long run.
Yeah, I remember a few years ago I had a conversation with a CFO and he said, stop showing me these models where everybody in the business saves 10 minutes. I'm not interested because I still have to pay everybody. So you didn't actually save me, you didn't actually reduce me by 3 or 4 entire roles in the business. So everybody got more efficient. That's great, but it's really difficult to put a number on that's meaningful at the CX level of a business, I think. What we are getting that's meaningful in numbers, and I think you touched on it there, is this runaway cost of tokens and the model that is emerging is very much the pay-as-you-go, right? Now, that's always been scary for adoption. That's a hard conversation to have when clients saying, well, how much is it going to cost me a month? Depends. How much are you going to use it? How much are you going to develop it? How are we having those conversations at the minute? And how is adoption happening anyway? What are you seeing out there?
So from my side, I think it's being transparent about like the costs and the bit of ambiguity around that. So we obviously do our best to lay out what we've seen in the past, like from experience and what people are actually consuming, but being transparent around that. I think there's still a lot of excitement though, which potentially blinds people to the cost to a degree until they get the invoice at the end of the month, obviously. But that excitement around adoption does still help and push people towards it. But we just try to be as transparent as possible, explain that we can't give you a completely accurate number. This is what we're seeing. These are the controls you can put in place. So having those limits, those hard limits set, and kind of working with them for the first few weeks to see what adoption is actually looking like and the cost around that. So it's very hard to be upfront with those numbers, but just managing that as best as possible.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And one of the things that's frustrated me, I think, throughout the last 3.5 years is when people talk about value of Copilot and other AI projects in terms of minutes saved, because exactly like you said, Sharon, if you take the average salary of someone in an organization and calculate what the equivalent is for all of the hours that people have saved, it's not cashable. It won't impact the bottom line that the CFO is having to budget for. So it makes that value conversation much harder. And it makes adoption much more important because I do still sometimes see organizations where they haven't realized that you have to do the work to help people change their behaviors. Because the value of starting to use Copilot and agents is when you actually change the way that you work and start to be able to do new things that you haven't been able to do before. And one of the ways that I talk to clients about value is very much in the context of what matters to them. And for some organizations, it might be impacting the bottom line. So, we want to put in place efficiencies, ideally not getting rid of people, because I really don't think that is, I don't think that's a valid long-term strategy for society as a whole. I think it's just going to cause a huge amount of problems. But helping them understand how they can reduce the cost of some of their internal processes, or looking at their top line revenue, like how do we actually sell faster? How do we sell to more customers? Or how do we get into new markets? What are the ways that we can do something that we haven't been able to do before? And this tends to work better when you look at it in terms of a business function, because the things that matter to finance will be very different to the things that matter to sales. And when you look at things like adoption, when you look at the business processes that you might try to reinvent or augment, that kind of the whole impact of how you do that with all of the tools layered together is going to be much more meaningful and measurable when you take it business function by business function. Now, I do think when you introduce things like co-work, which, in an M365 context, we've not really had consumption-based pricing beyond Syntex, or which didn't work very well. It didn't get the pull, did it? Because people didn't really know how to think of it. So I think that there needs to be much more focus on who actually needs to use this, what tasks do you use it for, and then again, from an adoption perspective, making sure that people understand when to use no AI, when to use vanilla Copilot, when to use co-work. And it's going to be difficult. I think it's going to be difficult, and it's going to be messy.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's when we're blending the skill sets, right? So again, you've got Azure has always been a consumption model, but the business side of the Microsoft platform is per user per month, right? They're very different types of thinking, whereas developers and infrastructure people are used to that kind of pay-as-you-go model. And I think it's the same with, if you think about developers, I think as Douglas, you were saying, if you end up having an estate of coded apps, that's on the Azure side of things more, and we've taken on developers and everything is custom, and now we have to maintain that, versus having out-of-the-box tooling that lower skilled people could use, but actually it's more of a governed estate than every single piece of code requiring individual governance. Plus, I've also not seen, and I don't know if you have, because I'm married to a futurologist, and so he's always like 2 years out, which is always good fun. And we're in this world where it's all flat and agents talk to agents and the world just solves itself. Nobody needs a job. It's great. But when you come back to work on a Monday and the app's not working, whatever, you see what I mean? You get a dose of reality of the fact that businesses still need processes still need to run the same every time, and somebody still needs to manage those processes. So is that we're gonna, and I haven't seen it yet, an influx of developers into the business, because with the Power Platform, like I say, citizen developers as a movement happened, more people in the organization could use the automation. Is that even true? Have the agents come far enough and deep enough into the platform where the end users are actually getting real value out of them? Or do we still need developers to come along and make us apps? Where are we at?
I don't think they've reached, I'm sure it's coming, and potentially in other AI providers that are like building out skills and being able to do things along those lines. So maybe not full automations or full agents, definition to be determined, but that full agent experience, I don't think has reached all the way through the stack yet. But I think there is still some value in just building out basic scheduled prompts, for example, or something along those lines, just to help people manage their day-to-day tasks. There's value there, but not to the extent that I think we're all hoping for or will get to eventually. I think it's still quite basic tasks.
Yeah, to be honest, I think we've I don't know if you guys have the same feeling, but my feeling is that it is kind of the same movement when all these local things started to kind of grow 6 years ago, 7 years ago, maybe. That okay, now in the company everyone can build something and all the process will be automatized. And for sure, if we look in the companies right now, we have a lot of automation that they don't run by themselves still, even 7 years after the Power Platform was launched. And we had the same features kind of as we had 6 years ago. And then all these years, people are trying to build automations. So when I think about the agents right now, I don't think we are that near of having something autonomously that will just run and do everything, because people don't necessarily understand the process and the processes are not in place still. The data is not in place still. I was working this past year in a data and AI company here in Brazil, and all the discussions were around having the right data because the data wasn't ready in most of the companies. And I'm not talking about like, I was talking about the small, mid, and really huge companies, and the data is not nearby being prepared for something to run autonomously on top of it. So I think there is a lot of ladders still to work on, and um, of course, I think we have small pieces where we can really go deep already, but I still think that it will take some time for the companies to get mature enough, and because I don't think we are very mature even in the automations. So putting an agent on top of a process that is not automatized uh, without the agents, it won't be that different. I hope that you guys understand me that of course
Yeah.
now everything is way faster than before because AI can do things way faster than before. But I still think that there's a lot of maturity we need to mature a lot on the processes and the data structure and these kind of things. And I think about the adoption that you guys were discussing is that we have a lot of different sides when we are talking about adoption. We have the adoption for the customer when we're developing something. We have the adoption internally on developing things using AI. And I think there's a lot of concerns about adoption in most of the cases. Maybe the companies, when they are paying for an agent right now, the CX guys, they are looking to, okay, how can I optimize? How can I cut costs? And how can I be more efficient or something like that? People, when on the work streams, they are concerned about not losing their jobs. And so there's a lot of, I think, pieces when we are talking about adoption, because it's another system, it's a new way of working, it's a new process, or it's new. So everything's pretty new. So I think probably we are kind of these guys where we're looking to, okay, how can I automatize a lot of process? How can I use AI in the day-to-day basis? But most of the people are scared still.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. I saw a survey recently of a group that gathers in London, and we're talking about CX level, so IT leaders, and they were asked, what are your barriers to adoption with AI? And having the budget, having the will, having the excitement in the business were not the problem. Being unsure that they were ready for it or that the data was right was the problem, because at the end of the day, it comes back to risk. But so we've seen this pattern, right? This was before we go into the cloud. Are you cloud ready? And we did the readiness bit, and then we all migrate into the cloud. So is it? And I don't know, is it just me, or are we all trying to shortcut the readiness bit at the minute, and get there faster than we probably should, because we should be having a look at our data and our systems?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at if you use SharePoint as an example, every company knows that they should sort out their content, their SharePoint sites, their teams, but it's hard and it's expensive. And I think whilst organizations have been doing a little bit of experimenting, they've got this big blocker, this big rock that they still need to sort out. And one of the things I'm definitely seeing is kind of this multi-speed journey through AI, where you've got some of those big organizations who had the resources to be able to move quickly in the early access program and, you know, experimenting with all of the different flavors of AI. And they've been able to find these pockets of value. And then you've got others maybe in regulated industries, or they've just got too much technical debt in their infrastructure, in their content, in their data, that has meant that they've been really slow to get started. And then others who were just waiting to see if it was actually real. So you've got these kind of multiple speeds. You've got an industry that is just insane with how quickly everything is moving, and the amount of hype, a lot of which is driven by share price, shareholder value. You've got companies like OpenAI and Anthropic with the IPOs. So they're creating all this noise in the system that's putting this additional pressure on companies to figure out what they need to do. And then you've got people who just have change fatigue. And it doesn't matter whether it's people inside a company who are worried that they're basically training AI to take their jobs, or helping put in place solutions that are going to mean that they no longer have a job. And then from a customer perspective, you know, we've all seen these examples of people using customer-facing chatbots or AI solutions where it's just been enormously painful for them. So all of these things are things that we need to navigate our way through.
Yeah, and I do think we rely on those pioneers to sort of get egg on their face a little bit, don't we, to learn that is going to happen. Sean, what are you seeing out there in that sense?
Yeah, I think across the board, there's a bit of, I think people think they don't need to do the hard yards, build the foundations anymore, because AI will just deal with my data for me. I don't need to build a database or SharePoints or data pipelines anymore. I'll just use an AI. And it's quite hard to almost push back against that in a responsible way, to say, look, you could use a very expensive agents or AI solution to maybe streamline this slightly, but the right thing to do is still go away, build your traditional pipelines, build your automations, and maybe you don't need AI to do this for you. You could do this in an automated way. But I think because everyone's so excited by that, it's quite a hard conversation to have, and people aren't. It's not always what everyone wants to hear. But the fact that we can do these things, or there's a feeling that you could do these things without having to put the hard yards in, is what we're seeing a lot, especially on the data front, classification, data readiness, and all those things. There's a feeling that isn't as important as it used to be, which is, we all know, not the case. You'll get a much better experience, AI or not, if you do the foundations right. So seeing a lot of that come up, and trying to manage that across the board. And I do agree with the fatigue. I think there was a lot of excitement, and there still is. So maybe we didn't hit us as much in the beginning, but people are tired. I mean, every time you open the news, there's some AI news there. There's a lot of fear mongering, or there's a lot of fear out there around AI. So people are scared, and there is fatigue around that, and it's coming up more and more, definitely.
Are you finding that companies want to move, saying that they don't want to do the hard stuff? Are they wanting to move too fast with it, seeing it all in the news, and then realize they've got this blocker of sorting their data out, and they just don't feel like they can, make an impact or move forward? Is there a lot of frustration coming through about that?
I think so, and I think especially we all see in the marketing material from, across the board, and how good this AI should be, and then the results aren't always as good as that, and it's because of those data layers. Sorry, the data level, and the process and all of that. So you're not getting the results you were hoping for. I think the bar is set extremely high, especially when people can go away and for £20 get a license and start to build in their own capacity, or start to do things that look really cool in their own capacity. And when you try to productionize that and it doesn't look as great, there's some disappointment there. So definitely need to manage that, and it can be hard to manage just because the bar is so high now.
Yeah. I think I think one of the things I've seen as well is sometimes this pressure to be seen to be doing something with AI is coming from like the board level or the C-suite, particularly people who are non-technical. And I was on a call with a client earlier this year with the CIO team, and they basically said, yeah, the board have told us that we've got to do something with AI and we don't really know what to do. And it didn't have the business sponsorship or the business leadership that you need to actually be able to understand what they're trying to achieve and what their objectives are. And it just leaves this complete mishmash. But ultimately, I think you've got these people at a very senior level who are expecting to see results, and they either don't realise or don't care that there's a body of work that needs to be done to actually get to what good looks like.
No, I completely agree. And I think it kind of, again, it reminds me that it comes all the way back to, it's a great idea to have a box where I can write in plain English what it is that I want the app to do, and I can get started with that. But I think all of us have been in the industry long enough to know that the very last thing that the client has at the point when they start a project is an understanding of what it is they actually want to do. Actually knowing what your requirements are when you're at that beginning stage is really important. So again, you have to do the legwork before you even have that paragraph that you could put in. Douglas, are you seeing that people are wanting to shortcut Power Apps and the Power Platform development because they think, but we can just tell it what to do now?
Yeah, to be honest, when I just to give you guys a little bit of context, because I was saying that I was in a data and AI company. I just moved. I just started back working with an European company, and I was looking to what changed in these past years that I was out. And this is a consultancy company specialized in Power Platform and the 365 solutions. So I was looking, okay, how AI changed the way that they were working with the Power Platform. And I think most of the companies within Power Platform, they haven't changed that much unless they were working with maybe Copilot Studio or something like that. But with the Power Platform solutions, like model-driven apps and these kind of things, it hasn't changed that much. One thing that I was discussing a lot was how can we think in a way that we could develop things in a more standardized way instead of, so people think a lot about doing things faster. One of the challenges that I think would be good for us as Power Platform guys would be not necessarily think that much on how to do faster, but do more standardized. Because now we can, with AI, we could create some mechanisms for us to validate what we are doing, or create some more best practices, or creating some more I don't know, guardrails in that sense. So one thing that we are discussing a lot is how can we bring those agents not to necessarily make us develop faster, but to make us develop in a more structured way. So it doesn't matter if it's me or if it is a business consultant that doesn't have developer skills. We would think in the same way, we would brainstorm in the same way, we would maybe come up with a solution that looks like the same, and we could work in a more standardized way. So a lot of the things that now I think it's good for platform consultants and developers is to think on this AI strategy, on how we can build our work better. And of course, if you can do faster, because maybe I will do a web resource, a JavaScript, or a PCF component faster than before, so be it. Nice, it's good. It's still, I think, the same thing that Zoe mentioned. We need to be careful about technical debt, about maintainability, about AI's law, because we can do a lot of those things. But I think we have an opportunity now to, even though it is a more drag and drop stuff, we can still do a lot of things, and we can speed up a little bit of our work, or at least think on how AI could make our work with a better quality. Because then we are providing value to the customer, right? It's not that much about delivering faster, but delivering things that are really providing value for the customer. And then if we can do faster, then it's good. It's a good collateral effect, let's say. But yeah, so I think that's at least the discussion that I have been having with my team lately. It's more on standardizing process. It's more on using AI to make mechanisms for us to, maybe if I get a junior guy, that he could think, or at least brainstorming the same way that I did, that I would do, uh, get a little bit of my experience in a digital twin or something, where we could make our team to work in a more in the same way, or at least have the same way of thought, let's say.
Yeah, I think you've hit on what is essentially the kind of my favorite thing about AI is that split of modes between planning and doing, right? So being able to talk to AI, or argue with it in my case, about what it, no, I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to do this. Trying to explain what it is that you're about to undertake as a project, to the point where you're actually putting together a plan that maybe you wouldn't have got to. It's almost like having some of the users and some of the objections in the room that takes a bit longer to get together, to schedule everybody's diaries, etc. To get that kind of a better thought process together before you even start developing anything. And I really like that about AI. I used to like it when we were in offices and we could literally argue with each other about technology, but AI doesn't fight back quite as much as my team. But that just means you've got passion, right, about it. But I mean, that takes you into the next sphere of it, where it's arguably the very best of AI is in that learning space. Let's forget the era of hallucinations. That's, I don't know if you guys are seeing the same as me, but gone largely. Occasionally it gets some bits wrong. That's about context, that's about clarity, and more usually about the conversation that you're having and what you're bringing to that conversation. But to me, you've got such the big knowledge base there, such the ability to be able to learn by questioning, by discussion with AI. I think that's its biggest gig, if I'm honest. It can upskill people really quickly. Are you seeing that as a requirement in organizations or as a side effect? So where are you seeing that?
So last month on the Copilot Fireside Chat, we had a really interesting guest from Microsoft, a guy called Jacob. He's not been there that long. He's only been there a few months, and this is a relatively new role. But his focus is AI era skilling. So a lot of the things that he and his team are doing are very internal facing within Microsoft. And one of the things that he talked to me about completely struck a chord with me, to the point where I'm actually talking to colleagues about how we leverage this for our upskilling and reskilling. And the example that he gave where they've seen the most success was actually with the technical support engineers. So for anyone who's ever managed to speak to a human in Microsoft support, these are the people that you get through to, who are expected to have a certain level of knowledge across everything that Microsoft have in the tech stack. All of this data in Microsoft sits in different wikis and knowledge bases and records of bugs and things like that. And typically, he said that it takes about 80 days for a technical support engineer to be fully onboarded and proficient. And they built an onboarding agent. So instead of giving people manuals or instructions or links to learning portals or e-content or anything like that, what they got through their company onboarding was a link to this onboarding agent. And that became the coach that they used throughout their onboarding. And he said that it reduced the effective onboarding time by 40%, which is quite significant. And what they found was really interesting, because these people were then, even once they'd officially kind of graduated or onboarded, whatever you want to call it, they were still using the onboarding agent as a way to check in if there was something they weren't sure of. And one of the things that they built into the agent was the ability to use it almost like a coach. So if there was a difficult conversation, you weren't quite sure how to address it, you could use this onboarding agent as a coach. And he said, even when people graduate, they're still coming back and using it in that capacity. So it's onboarded people more quickly to a higher quality, and is allowing them to continue to be more effective even once they're officially enrolled, which I just thought was fascinating.
Yeah, the generalist nature, the amount of knowledge that you need to have. I mean, even like doctors, etc. When you're at that generalist layer, it's vast, and certainly in the technology sphere, it really, really is. And I think Sean, the Zen Zero built their own AI for exactly that, right?
Yeah, so that was, and I think knowledge sharing and being able to surface knowledge quickly is one of the best use cases. We've seen that a lot with HR as well, so sharing policies across organizations and giving a chat experience around that. So very, very similar concepts in being able to find knowledge more quickly and in a essentially a nicer way of surfacing it. But within Zen Zero, yes, that is a big thing, and that's around previous tickets, previous issues, and people can share what they've seen very quickly into a central knowledge base, which can then be queried in a much more efficient way. So, not trawling through documentation, looking for keywords, actually being able to ask the question you have and get an answer back. And I think that's going to become a bigger and bigger use case across industries and departments.
And I think, I mean, we all did the same thing. The first agent I built was a knowledge agent on MS Learn, and the second one was about licensing, because those are the things that you get asked about all the time, right? I think you need to go and trawl the most recent published data. That's what I found anyway. Okay, we don't have too much longer left. Is there anything that you guys have seen out there? I mean, that was a really good example, Zoe, that has been built that you thought, well, hang on a minute, would that have been either possible or done at the speed or the detail that it was done because AI was in that project or within that space? Anybody got a good example? Be on the spot there a bit.
So we've had one that comes to mind was actually just an automation flow. So using Power Automate, or traditionally would have used Power Automate, but being able to build something with Studio and the automation on the back end that could deal with that ambiguity a lot better. So it was around document management and document recognition. Traditionally, we would have had to cater for every single use case, typo, or different naming convention that came in. But because we could get an agent to do that recognition and classification, we could build that flow much faster. So it was just one case of being able to develop faster because of AI.
Nice.
So not so much something that's been built, but one of my favorite ways to use Researcher is before Christmas, I had a 2-day in-person workshop. And even though everybody was in the room, we used Copilot in Teams to actually capture all of the transcripts. And then I fed all of those transcripts, all of the files, all of the prep work into Researcher. And in about 10 minutes, I was able to get an excellent first draft with an exec summary, an overview of each of the individual sections, the key themes that ran through all of them. The stuff that it pulled out was just incredible. And if I'd have tried to do that manually, I mean, it would have taken me days and days. And to be honest, probably wouldn't have been finished to that level.
Yeah, I think that's the stuff, isn't it, really, where it would have taken so long to trawl through and get some stuff done. For me, it would be simplifying project management. I think I'm really looking forward to what comes out of the planner side with agents and that side of things, because there are things there that, you know, I look at it and think I haven't got time to deal with that, because I know it's a long-winded task to sit and break down all your tasks and think things through. It's where there are big legwork tasks that I don't enjoy, that I think really get exciting. Douglas, have you seen any good examples of AI sitting next to development?
Yeah, I mean, this example that I mentioned to you guys is something that we are trying to do as much as possible of making sure that we have a streamlined process. So using AI to really, because we have different people, we have different ways of thinking, and we have different experiences. So if we can gather these into a single place where, okay, I'm really good at capturing user perspective in a workshop, but I'm not so good on putting these into a document or a structured document or a structured process for the solution architect, something like that. So this is something that I think it's really valuable. I can get my experiences running a process or a project within AI, using AI to discuss and these kind of things. And afterwards, I could use a prompt or something to capture the way that I thought, not necessarily the result of it, but the way that I discuss it with AI, and then put this into a process for my team to maybe use the same way of thinking and maybe using the same concepts. Or I think this is something that we are trying to do a lot here, and I would argue that it's a good way of putting a team with different experiences in the same way. And we are trying to use this both in the consultancy, in the consultants part, let's say, on the business side, with brainstorming ideas, capturing meetings, transcripts, translating these into requirements and these kind of things. But also on the development side, when we say, okay, this needs to be developed as a PCF component or as an automation or a code app or something like that, that the same kind of things that we captured on the business side could be transferred in the same pattern to the tech guys, so they can develop the same thing. So this is something that we are trying to do a lot here, and I think for the consultancy companies, I think would be worth investing time on trying to build agents around that specific part.
Yeah, I mean, I love those things that just become kind of second nature because they're so good, because they're so useful, like that. I mean, you're just going to end up, you wouldn't even start by doing it another way. Eventually you're just going to go exactly through that pattern, aren't you? And I love it's much like recording a Teams call and having AI do the notes. I don't sit with my, well, I do actually, because I'm a bit old-fashioned, but I don't take as many notes. I can be part of the conversation because I know the notes are being taken, because I know I can ask questions of the notes and who said what and did I really commit to doing that in the meeting. Then I feel like a pressure is taken off, but I naturally use that all the time now. And I guess that's the measure of a good process, isn't it, once it's in place, or a good feature. So I think certainly with Microsoft's focus of getting those tools in the back end of Teams, an absolute huge win for me. And I think we are all a little bit used to that, and even forget maybe that it's AI going on in the background. We just think of it as part of the tool set these days. What else is there out there that we've not discussed? I mean, I think one of the powerful things that I've seen, and yours reminded me of it, Douglas, because it's a way of giving a pattern the attention and the consistency that it deserves, is that occasionally I ask the co-pilot to interview me, to ask me questions about what it is that I want, and I don't see enough people doing that. And I think Zoe, you were touching earlier about and yourself too there, Sean, about teaching people how to ask and how to prompt. Are we still there? Are we still at the point where people don't really know how to leverage the tools that we've got?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's interesting because if you look at the Google search trends, for example, I think people are starting to search a little bit more in Google in the same way they would natural language. But the ability to actually be able to write a prompt with sufficient context and grounding to get a particular outcome, I don't think that's commonplace yet. I think all of us who are at the forefront of what this tech can do, we've all had to figure this out. But when you look at the general population, the standard end users in an organization, or even those people who maybe don't work in corporate environments, who they might benefit from using AI personally, they still don't understand how to do that. So there's a heavy lift needed, I think.
Yeah, Sean, are you seeing a lot on the training side of things? Lots of demand coming through.
I was going to say, I think training is a huge part of what we do and will be for the foreseeable future, mostly because of the spread of adoption. So you've got super users who are driving ahead, use this day to day across a variety of tool stacks, but AI as part of their day to day, and other users who have never seen it before or actually used it at all. So with such a wide spread, as well as the tools changing very frequently. So while we do a lot of work with the foundation, so prompting what AI is, how to use it, when to use it, the actual tools are changing at such a rapid pace that there's an ongoing training aspect to it. So making sure people can use what is offered to them. And the reality is these aren't cheap tools. No matter which ones you look at, you're paying a lot of money for them. So making sure you're getting maximum return on that by upskilling people and training them and pushing that adoption. I don't see that changing anytime soon.
Yeah, I do agree. And I think the adoption is always the hardest part, isn't it? And I think Douglas was saying that it's about trust at the end of the day, that you're at the CX level, that you've got your data right and that people can use it effectively. But then from an adoption point of view, people trusting that it is going to save them time. I mean, look, we're in a technology industry, and there are still people in my small team that haven't even touched AI yet, haven't even leveraged it for for their own skill set because they're busy doing the work. So I'm not quite sure. Go on, Zoe, give me a guess. If we were to guess how many, what percentage of an organisation or all organisations have touched AI as part of their work life, what do you think it is? Where do you think we're at?
So I think it's probably a little bit higher than we think if we just take the word touched. If I look at Copilot usage stats as an example, it's not uncommon for organizations to have really high monthly active usage, but that could simply be that an individual is putting on Copilot in a team meeting. Doesn't mean that they're actually using it in any other way to augment their work. So, I think for organizations who've made it available, we've probably got relatively good usage of some of those no-brainer features where they don't necessarily need to understand how to prompt or how to get the results they need.
Yeah, I think that exactly what you said, Zoe. I think the thing when we ask about adoption, I think we need to consider levels of adoption, because probably people, or usage, let's say, not necessarily just adoption, but usage. I think most of the people, maybe people are really using it. I don't know. I would argue that could be, I don't know, 30%, 40% of the companies are using, but they are not using really on, like, for automating their work or doing something a little bit, let's say, I wouldn't say very complex, but more than no-brainer tasks. I think if we look into those aspects, like who is really creating stuff that will leverage their work and make their way of work faster, better, and these kind of things, that I think that is really low. That would be my guess, at least looking to some of the companies that I've been working on, and looking to some of the companies that I've been doing consultancy for in the past year. Even though we have a lot of tools available and we have thousands of different ways of doing things with AI now, I think most of the companies are just using for minor stuff.
I think that base adoption is, as was mentioned, quite good. So people just using it, summarize this email, help me respond to this. Very basic things is good, but that next level up, I don't think we're seeing that just yet. And there's so much you can do, and it's maybe a bit of not understanding or training around what's possible, but also it takes a bit of effort and a bit of a change in the way you work to get that all working correctly. So I think it will just take time for people to really use these tools to their full potential.
I think that's the hardest bit as well. I don't know if you've read the new Future of Work report that Jamie Teague and Microsoft published in December, but there were some really interesting things in that report, and she did a keynote at ESPC where she talked through some of it. And she was saying that in terms of like generalist AI productivity, we've kind of hit a ceiling with that individual level. Because if an individual is using AI in the context of their productivity tools, there's a certain point of efficiency gains or benefits that they can get. And then that next level comes when you start to actually look across a team or a department or a process or an entire line of business. And this is the bit where it gets really hard, because people are now, or organizations are now having to start thinking about how do you redesign that human plus agent collaboration, and how, instead of instead of just looking at a process and taking maybe a traditional approach to automation or RPA, actually looking at the outcomes and saying, okay, is there a different way to do this using a blend of human and agent? And this is the bit. This is kind of the bit that's really hard, because we we haven't really seen it done at scale yet. So
Yeah.
I think the potential is definitely there, and this is kind of where people are wrestling with to get to that next level of maturity.
Yeah, I don't think we have good examples out there yet, do we? It's not something that we've seen, that blended approach kind of shouted about enough. Okay, if we get really specific then, and Douglas, I'm going to come to you on this one. How would you change that number that you've estimated there of adoption? If we were talking about just people that are working in the Power Platform and are using the AI tools within Power Platform, what do you think our adoption is at that?
Then I would drop that, like, I don't know, to the bottom.
Yeah. Okay, and is that because
Uh,
the quality of tool, or what do you think?
I think it's just maybe, I think, yeah, maybe a lot of these AI tools were, at least in the beginning, designed or they were pitched for developers that are doing custom developed from scratch, let's say, like custom applications from scratch. So when we talk about Power Platform, that most of the things are low code, the least code things, maybe people don't think that they could use these tools in that specific area, because, yeah, I mean, how can I do something like that? Because everything's like drag and drop. But I mean, Microsoft is pushing some of these skills and things for us to use tools, AI tools within the Power Platform. And I think even if we didn't have those skills, we could do a lot of things, because behind the scenes, everything that we do on Power Platform, even though it's drag and drop, it's XML, it's something that we could do something to automatize or to build behind the scenes. So I think people just don't think that they can use that. So I don't know how many, I haven't heard any of the Power Platform consultants that I work with thinking about using Claude directly in the browser to do some test cases in the browser within a model-driven app or a custom app or something like that. So I just think that they still don't see scenarios where they could use. So that's why probably they are not using that much. So I think most of the consultants, for at least in my team, they are using more to build maybe requirements or to discuss on the licensing model or maybe data model structure, like more these discussions with a coach, like a technical coach or something, other than really building something within the platform.
Yeah, I've seen that with like, how would I do this in DAX? You know, you want a better query, you want a more performant Power FX, you know, that kind of stuff. As a support agent, yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think it is difficult, again, from a trust point of view, because there have been some versions that weren't as up to date, or the Power Platform is just one of those services that changes frequently, or so frequently that which model do we expect to be completely up to date with that, you know, in terms of how the implementation can be done. So I think you're right. I think it sits outside of some technologies as a advisor. So I think we're technology adjacent, not necessarily replacement. But I do think it sits well with things like PowerPoint and Word, where you just don't ever learn how to do that thing, you know, because you'll never need it. Excel is mine. Guilty of Claude in Excel doing an awful lot of the heavy lifting for me with an awful lot of the spreadsheets that I have to do in my new role. Okay, I know we're kind of getting close to time. I don't think I've had a quick look. I don't think there's anything that's popped up in the chat specifically that we want to ask. But is there anything that any of you guys want to bring up and specifically talk about as part of this session?
So I think for me, I know in some of the prep content that came over, there was a question around what skills should people be developing now. And so there are two things that I think are really important for people working in tech to think about at the moment. The first is that when we look at the boundaries or the lines between the different technologies, they're becoming increasingly blurred. So for people who work in the Power Platform, being able to kind of look open to the left and right and understand how that will interact with all of the other apps and systems that people are using, it becomes incredibly important. And likewise, people sitting in other technology areas as well, because these things can't be built and deployed in isolation anymore. You know, if we build something in Power Platform, there's a strong potential that that might be made available through Copilot or Teams or something like that. So understanding what that means and taking that into account is important. And then for me, I think one of the most important things that people working in tech should be focusing on to make sure that they stay relevant is learning the business side of it a little bit more. So learning how to understand what the business problem is, not just the specific thing that a customer or a colleague says, you know, I want you to build X thing for me, but actually what is it you're trying to do and what is the outcome that you're trying to do, and being able to help guide them on that journey, because the thing that they're asking for might not be the best way or the right way to do that. And being able to tie the things that we build from a technology perspective to the business outcomes is going to become much more important.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on. Certainly and again, on the skill set side of things, when you look at kind of trying to build out services from a consultancy point of view to help people with AI. I mean, which skill exactly do you go looking? I know you've struggled with this, Sean. Which skill do you go looking for? Because actually, it's technology plus AI. It's not AI on its own. It doesn't sit. Yeah. It goes across, right? So how do you encourage people to learn a mindset that's useful in an AI consultancy role? Sure, I'm going to go to you with that because I know you're struggling with
just that small question. So it's a very easy one. I think it's being inquisitive, to be honest, and not being scared to try things you potentially aren't used to, because the world is changing so quickly, and technology stacks we're used to are also changing so quickly. So being inquisitive enough to go away, dive into something, try something, obviously in a safe environment with the right controls, but experimenting with these new ways of working and technologies, and being bold enough to do that is something that we're looking for. But trying to just stay on top of it as best as possible. But I think what Zoe mentioned, linking things to business outcomes is going to become so important, especially when I can go into Claude or ChatGPT or Copilot and spin up a script and a nice shiny website that looks the part. And you're going to have business users doing that more and more, and being able to link that back to the tech need behind that to take it to production and actually make it valuable. So someone who can, as hard as it is to do, talk on both sides of the coin, and just understand why people are looking for things.
Yeah, I think that curiosity is key, isn't it?
Yeah.
Douglas, are you finding the same thing in the technical sphere, that we need to have that open-mindedness and that curiosity to step into what it can teach us?
Yeah, definitely. And I completely agree with what Zoe said. I even reacted with heart in Teams here, because the thing is, I was discussing with one of the business consultants in my team a couple of years back, and he was asking what he should start, or which types of things he should maybe focus on learning. And I said, I think probably now it's the best time for being a business consultant, so to say, because you are in the right side of the things. Now everything on the development side, not that everything will be automated, but it's way faster and easier to do now. So if the developers, they think in the way that they don't have this mindset of I won't use AI to do things because AI is replacing me or something like that. If they don't have this mindset, they have a lot of work that they can build things faster or easier for the business consultants to develop on top. And on the business consultants, they need to understand even more the business, because creating fields and forms won't be that complicated anymore. At some point, we'll have something that we would just write something in the chat, and the Copilot or whatever we build on behind it will create forms in the field for us. So I think that's not the important part. Of course, as Zoe mentioned, it's important to know which features or which solutions we have available, because then we can kind of spin up, okay, this is the problem. I could solve in maybe three different ways. But for this purpose, for this way of working, for this company and their context and everything, that option B would be the best or something like that. So I think those things is something that people need to look in more. So I would focus more on the business side, plus creating knowledge on maybe discussing and understanding different concepts, so we could pick it up and say, okay, for this problem, maybe these two options are the best, and let's go forward. So yeah, I don't think we need to. I wouldn't focus that much on learning how to build fields, forms, business rules, and these kind of things. Of course, it's important to know, but more on the concept other than the how to do really, because these will become obsolete at some point.
I agree. I think the how is less of the challenge. The why is definitely, and that again, you can see that has washed out in the code side of things as well. In that, while we've apparently replaced all of these developers that we don't need anymore, questionable. We've also got the highest value people are those that have been in technology for the longest and can understand why they're designing it in that way, that can effectively be the correct guide for AI. And that's the role that I think we need to be getting people to educate themselves for, is to be that. I understand the problem space, I understand where we've come from and where we're going to, and I can guide AI to help me develop the right thing in the right technology, and effectively plan that out and then deliver that into a business. I completely agree that that's the killer skill set, I think, to have in an AI world. Fortunately, we all have that. So, and that's how you pick a good panel. No, I think the the learning paths are probably that's the thing I'm getting asked the most. What should I be learning? So I think that's really good insight there from within those organisations. Okay, I'm going to need to draw us to a close fairly soon. I think we're nearly 20 past. Amber, where are we at? Are we nearly at time?
Sorry, just realised I was still on mute there. Yeah, it's up to you really. We've got about 15 minutes left. So if you want to keep talking or not, yeah, completely up to you both.
Okay. What I'll do is I'll recap where we're at and then what we've got going on for the rest of the week. So thank you very much for coming along and sharing your insight with us. I think what we've decided there is AI good, but largely undeveloped. We've got to keep going on that journey, right? How are we going to use it? Therefore, how does it develop to become more useful to us? And I think it's an ongoing, and I think Sean said earlier, it's going so quickly, right? These are shifting sands that we're on here. And I think keeping a balance and even keel and getting those fundamental pieces right. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a SharePoint expert, but getting your data right at the base level, understanding access and privilege and governance in your organization is probably the key to leveraging anything on top. And I think we've learned that with loads of the technologies, Power Platform included, as we've gone through. It's becoming more and more important because security by obfuscation is not a thing anymore. The agent sees everything. So I think it's more and more important to understand what you need and what AI can help you with, rather than here's some cash, can I buy some AI? Which I think has been a bit of a trend that hopefully will stop once people are actually getting those good enough use cases, and we can be talking about them more and more and seeing the business benefits of those. And I think there's really exciting times ahead in terms of what it is that we're going to develop, and how those humans are going to guide the AI to create that really wonderful stuff. So thank you very much, Sean from Zen Zero, Zoe from Kyndryl, and Douglas. Sorry, I didn't get the company. Douglas from Douglas.
Telemite is a company.
Okay, thank you for coming along and sharing with us. It's really important to keep talking about these things and sharing with others that don't have the time to be as involved as we are in the industry, exactly where we're going and what we're seeing. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
So coming up the rest of the week, as I said earlier, tomorrow we've got the lovely Clarissa coming along to talk to us about user-defined functions in Power Apps, so right back down to the technical level. And then we're going to have a look at Copilot adoption. So again, back to the users and how it is we go through that adoption process with Leslie. We've got Douglas coming back later in the week to talk to us about using Claude across the Power Platform. Nice. And that's going to hopefully touch on how it is you use that cohesion with AI rather than it replacing you. And then Zoe's going to come back towards the end of the week and talk with Clarissa and I about how we're doing on that Women in Tech goal that we set ourselves some years ago. And I think, you know, how we can lead that and how we can develop that further. So please do join us later in the week for more of these sessions. Thank you again to Sharon. This was your session for the week, and we will see you later in the week to Zoe and Douglas. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Luke, over to you.